Despite the fact that Penn State wrestling is expected to dominate at the NCAA tournament, they're still going to have to earn it, and there's some pretty tough individual matchups along the way.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling. Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. The number one daily Penn State sports podcast out there. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show. So, the toughest wrestlers that each Penn State wrestler could face along the way in the NCAA tournament, though most of the wrestlers are expected to get to the semifinals, the championship. They're going to have some tough matchups along the way. So which matchups are you most looking forward to? Let me know down in the comments section. And if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date with Penn State wrestling and your other favorite Penn State sports teams. As always, we are going to finish with heavyweight, but start with lightweight. Start with Luke Lilledahl and work our way up the weight classes. Lilledahl, I've talked about it before, how the 125-pound bracket is practically a roulette wheel. Lilledahl is a title contender. Yes, that's kind of obvious now as the number one seed. But before that, when we had these conversations, it was, well, will he even make the podium? No, he is a legitimate title contender, but so are 8 other wrestlers in this bracket. And he's going to have to face 3, maybe 4 of them in the process here. Starting with his potential quarterfinal matchup, which is going to be intriguing. Sheldon Seymour, Caleb Smith. Sheldon Seymour of Lehigh, Caleb Smith of Nebraska. Those names are going to sound familiar to Penn State wrestling fans because Lilledahl defeated both of them and defeated Caleb Smith twice. Sheldon Seymour, and both of these went down to the wire. Lilledahl defeating Caleb Smith 4-2 and 4-3 respectively. And then again, Sheldon Seymour 4-1 result. So these ones were close. And remember, that takedown against Seymour was in the final seconds. So Lilledahl didn't have these as strong. Were they wins at the end of the day? Absolutely. But they were close. And he's going to have to go through one of them, guaranteed, in the quarterfinal if he wants to advance to the semifinals. And then that gets difficult as well. Richie Figueroa of Arizona State is the defending national champion. He is a 5 seed. Vincent Robinson of NC State is a 4 seed. That's who you're going to face most likely in the semifinals. Now, nothing's a guarantee here, but we're talking about the toughest wrestlers, the best matchups, the best talent overall that each Penn State wrestler could face. Is there somebody that could disrupt either side of the bracket? Absolutely. Dean Peterson's on this side of the bracket with Luke Lilledahl. Remember, he defeated Lilledahl in the regular season. And then a guy like Brendan McCrone. I'm pointing out wrestlers that happened to defeat Lilledahl in the regular season. However, you understand my point is it a guarantee that the top wrestlers ultimately make their respective semifinal and championship? Not necessarily, but the ones that are going to give Lilledahl the most problems on that path are the ones we need to talk about. So Richie Figueroa being the defending national title is an obvious choice here and is going to be a difficult one because he's a really good defensive wrestler. But Lilledahl's offense, I don't know how many people can match that in 125, especially when he's starting to peak. And then when you get to the championship, most people are going to assume it's going to be Matt Ramos. Maybe they have Lilledahl and Ramos or a Figueroa versus Ramos matchup in the championship, which is understandable because Figueroa is the defending champion. But I am not overlooking Troy Spratley of Oklahoma State. He beat Figueroa to get to the Big 12 championship, and he didn't win it. He lost to Jet Strickenberger of West Virginia. And he went on to win the Big 12 championship at 125. There's also the 3 seed in Eddie Ventresca of Virginia Tech. So anybody on that side, I don't know that it's a lock that Matt Ramos is able to find a way back to the championship and get revenge against Luke Lilledahl. It's not an obvious 1 versus 2. Do I have confidence that Lilledahl makes it? Yes, but he's certainly going to have to earn it. Going to Braeden Davis at 133. Braeden Davis he's going to be tested right out of the gate in that second round matchup. Being the 8th seed, you're going to go up most likely against that number 9 seed in Braxton Brown of Maryland. And that was a close one. Even though Davis had started to build a lead, Brown wouldn't go away. Brown would not go away in that matchup. It was 9-7 for those that remember at the Big Ten tournament. So that's a coin toss. That is a true coin flip. And you don't know who's necessarily going to move on from that one. Braxton Brown was 23-4 on the season. Guy knows how to win, but Davis does have the head-to-head matchup victory so far. Of course, we can't, it's not something that you can always use there because as we saw, Dylan Chauver and Nick Bazakis were able to get revenge in the process even though Davis had beaten them in the regular season. So just because he defeated Braxton Brown at Big Tens does not mean that result's necessarily going to repeat at NCAA's. Point being is that Davis will be tested right out of the gate. If you get to the quarterfinal as Braeden Davis or as Braxton Brown, but for the sake of this conversation around Penn State wrestling, Davis gets to the quarterfinal. Lucas Bird, Davis lost to him 7-1. And I know Davis is healthier now, is closer to 100% now than what he was in the middle of the season when Penn State and Illinois wrestled. And Bird won very decisively. Bird's my choice at NC. It was my choice at Big Tens to win at 133 and my choice to win at NCAA's as well. Without Ryan Crookham, I don't know that there's a better wrestler. So if Davis is going to pull off the upset, probably to an extent unthinkable for most people that follow wrestling closely here, Davis upsetting Bird is going to be one of the shocking events of this tournament. I won't say that it's completely impossible, but highly unlikely. If Davis happens to move on, I think from there, you're in if you can knock out Lucas Bird, I think your chances continue to rise. It's not like there is another set of wrestlers that I think it's Lucas Bird and then a category of Drake Ayala and Nasir Bailey. Nasir Bailey is the number 3 seed. Davis defeated him in the regular season, but then Nick Bazakis, remember the run that he had at Big Ten that ultimately ended with Davis being pinned by him. Kairini as the 26 seed. I get done talking about Bazakis here. Bazakis has to go through Arini, who is a former All-American in his own right and is a 26 seed in this bracket. So he could disrupt a lot of things. What I'm trying to get at is Braeden Davis, if he's able to defeat Lucas Bird, the path gets slightly easier. He'll have to go through either Zeth Romney of Cal Poly or Dominic Serrano of Northern Colorado, most likely, and then would face Drake Ayala, Nasir Bailey, Connor McGonigal of Virginia Tech in that championship if we're looking at the other side of the bracket. Then on to Beau Bartlett at 141. Okay, everybody knows that Jesse Mendez and Beau Bartlett, that's his toughest matchup, right? Of course. It's not a hot take to say one way or the other. And well, if you're trying to say that that's not going to be his toughest matchup, then okay. I know Brock Hardy eventually, right? But you're going to meet them. If you're going to meet that wrestler, it's going to be in the championship. Everybody has the semifinal match circled for Beau Bartlett. But there's a wrestler that maybe could change things, make things interesting that you don't want to look past if you're Beau Bartlett. And he's not going to do that. Tegan Jamison of Oklahoma State. Jamison won a Big 12 title in his own right. He's the 7 seed here. This would be the quarterfinals matchup. Now, Bartlett also has to go through most likely Joseph Oliveri of Rutgers again in that second round. He's the 15 seed, and granted, he could lose in his opening round matchup, but I expect Bartlett to match up with Oliveri again for the 3rd time this season. And it's tough to beat the same person 3 times in a row. They say that in football. It's tough to beat a team 3 times. Same thing in wrestling applies here. So if Bartlett moves past Oliveri, I am not looking past Jamison. He is a subtle national title contender in his own right as a 7 seed. And I know this class has Bartlett, Mendez, Brock Hardy. I understand that, but 141 does get really interesting. Andrew Alirez, I didn't even get to mention him yet. So that's the path for Bartlett, is that he has probably one of the most difficult paths of all the Penn State wrestlers in this tournament, with Oliveri, Jamison, and then Mendez back to back as the most likely projection here. And then you got to earn it in the championship. Andrew Alirez is an 8 seed. Brock Hardy is the number 1 seed. I know Bartlett beat Hardy, but it was close. It took the final seconds in that Penn State-Nebraska dual meet. Andrew Alirez was projected to be a national title favorite this season alongside Mendez and Bartlett. It was one of the 3, but 141 gets so much more exciting because now it has expanded. There are more names included here. Tegan Jameson, for example. It's more than just Alirez and Mendez and Bartlett. It's Brock Hardy, it's Jameson, it's Vance Von Bauer, all those wrestlers. But Bartlett's path is not easy by any means. Up next, we have 149, 157, 165, and 174. Shayne Van Ness. It's not just Ridge Lovett that's in his way. Could face a very tough quarterfinals match. I'll tell you why after the break. And today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers do not lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro-4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro-4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro-4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro-4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. That is nissanusa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. That's right, $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You can pick your favorites if you've got your eye on, say, a few underdogs this year. FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. You can stay in the action. Tournament games are happening almost every day, and there's always something exciting to bet on. It's easy, it's fast. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Remember, if you want to be as up-to-date with Penn State wrestling through this entire week with the NCAA tournament, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Let's pick back up with 149 and Shayne Van Ness. Of course, Caleb Henson is the favorite here. Ridge Lovett is not being overlooked either as the 2 seed, but because he's the defending champion, Caleb Henson is most likely going to make it all the way on the other side of the bracket. But Shayne Van Ness is that 3 seed, so he's only going to face Henson if both of them meet in the national championship. But this path for Van Ness, it's a respectable one. Not maybe to the caliber of a Beau Bartlett, but I am interested in that quarterfinals matchup. So in order to get there, he's going to either have to face number 14, the 14 seed in Chance Lamer, or Andrew Clark, somebody that he's familiar with that he defeated at Big Ten, Clark from Rutgers. But then moving on to the quarterfinals matchup, Lachlan McNeil of North Carolina is kind of one of, I'd maybe put him into the same category as Tegan Jameson, where you don't want to just overlook him as a 6 seed. He could potentially pull off this upset, and we've seen that Shayne Van Ness is vulnerable to that when he lost to Cannon Webster of Illinois. And potentially could face Cannon Webster once again of Illinois, but he has to move past Lachlan McNeil. I have that one circled as, okay, if Shayne Van Ness is able to get past this one, then obviously Ridge Lovett might stand in his way. Maybe it's a rematch with Cannon Webster because Lovett's the 2 seed, Webster's the 7 seed. And I know that Lovett won the Big Ten title at 149, but Webster, that was a 1-0 decision. It was close. Lovett didn't put up all these points. He did against Kyle Parko. Maybe that's where all the offense went. So he didn't have any left over for that championship. So Lovett, I think, doesn't have a one-way ticket into the championship. He's going to have to get a rematch with Cannon Webster. And Webster, as a redshirt freshman, just continues to get better. Losing by major decision the first time around to Shayne Van Ness and then to return the favor with a win in that semifinal shows how quickly Webster has picked up on things and is really peaking at the right time. You have to watch out for those wrestlers, those up-and-coming wrestlers that are in their first or second year, that are starting to learn things, figure things out, continuing to go through the motions. They're the ones that will typically disrupt these brackets. So Cannon Webster might be a dark horse here to potentially make things interesting on this side of the bracket. I think Ridge Lovett and Shayne Van Ness should be the favorites to meet Caleb Henson. However, do not disregard Cannon Webster. And if we're Caleb Henson might be the favorite here, but I'm not going to look past Paniro Johnson of Iowa State, the number 4 seed, somebody that Van Ness could only face in the championship. All right, and of course consolations, but that's so difficult to project with who wins, who loses, right? And we're talking about strictly through the winners bracket of the tournament here. So if you are going to face Paniro Johnson in the winners bracket, it would be in the championship. Johnson's kind of forgotten about since he dealt with the gambling scandal, the alleged gambling scandal, right? So I'll leave it there because I don't know all the details, but Johnson was out of wrestling for a period of time. He's now back, and he's a title contender just as much as Lovett, just as much as Van Ness here. Henson's the favorite, but there's a few solid title contenders after that. Then at 157, Tyler Kasak. Now, I've already gone on the record that if you're not bought into Tyler Kasak as the favorite here at 157, then I don't know what you're doing. Now, I know Meyer Shapiro of Cornell exists, and that will most likely be the path that's the crash course at 157. That might be the case, but I still like Kasak's odds to win 157 overall. He has, out of all the Penn State wrestlers, I think he and Mitchell Mesenbrink, I have some of the most confidence in across the board for all 10 of them. So if Tyler Kasak's going to get to the championship, he's going to have a solid 16 or 17 matchup with Cody Chittum of Iowa State or DJ McGee moving on to the next round, but Kasak should be the favorite there. And then in that quarterfinal, Joey Blaze as an 8 seed, Tommy Askey as a 9 seed of Minnesota, 2 Big Ten wrestlers. I think Kasak is still significantly better than them, but you're going to have to go through one of them to get to the semifinal. But it's not this overwhelming wrestler that you know what you're getting with Joey Blaze. You know what you're getting with Tommy Askey to an extent. And the same thing with Brandon Cannon, since we saw Kasak win by major decision against him and practically pin him in that Big Ten title match. But Cannon has impressed me. So Cannon is another younger wrestler that is only going to continue to get better. I mean, he went from somebody that was, ranked pretty respectively to now he's a 5 seed. Now he's he's top 5, top 3, according to some different rankings. So don't overlook Cannon and definitely expect him to get better. That's on that side of the bracket. That's how it would have to work. I think that it is Kasak's side of the bracket to lose. I really don't think there's anybody that stands in his way that he would have to face that would overwhelm him. It's really him and Meyer Shapiro. But what is Ja'Cory Teemer's status? So as much as everybody is going to say it's either Kasak or Shapiro, that's fine. But there's still Antrell Taylor on that side of the bracket. There's still to go along with Shapiro. Ed Scott is a 22 seed of NC State. I still think that's a quality wrestler that could maybe disrupt things here. Ja'Cory Teemer is an 18 seed. He's injured. He's dealing with an injury. We know that's a talented wrestler. As much as I want to dunk on the Iowa Hawkeyes and the wrestling program here, I will never look past Ja'Cory Teemer and say, well, he can't do it. He was a national runner-up at this weight class a season ago, losing to Levi Haines in decisive victory, but still a rather close one for what it's worth. He could, if he's feeling at his best, that's a title matchup in itself. That's a championship caliber matchup in itself with Shapiro and most likely Ja'Cory Teemer. I don't think Johnny Lovett of Central Michigan is defeating Teemer in that 15 versus 18 matchup. Teemer and Shapiro, just watch for that one because maybe Shapiro doesn't even meet in that championship with Kasak, even though that's still what I would take here. On to 165, this bracket's a little simpler to project because Mitchell Mesenbrink is the odds-on favorite. I don't think there's going to be a soul that is picking another wrestler at 165. If there is, let me know down in the comments section and we can have a conversation. But Mitchell Mesenbrink, if he is going to eventually move on and win, as confident as most people are in making that selection, making that prediction, he's still going to have to go through maybe the likes of a Cam Amin of Oklahoma State, Cam Steed of Missouri as those 8 or 9 matchups. I would like to see Cam Amin of Oklahoma State, obviously with the David Taylor connection. I will say this, though. There's Terrell Barraclaw of Utah Valley, former Penn State wrestler, that they could meet in the semifinals. I don't know that that happens, though. Julian Ramirez of Cornell very well might be, he's the 5th seed, very well might be the second best wrestler in this bracket. And I wouldn't need a lot of convincing to believe that. I'm starting to just looking at this list. But Mesenbrink, he would have to face Julian Ramirez in that semifinal to get to the championship, where he would face an unfamiliar foe in Peyton Hall of West Virginia potentially. Or is it Mikey Caliendo again of Iowa as the 3 seed? Those two are on the opposite end of the bracket and wouldn't wrestle Mesenbrink until the championship. Could a Paddy Gallagher disrupt things as the 26th seed? Now, he would have to upset Peyton Hall, who won a Big Ten championship, who only has 1 loss on the season. That's where they are in the bracket. And honestly, at the end of the day, it would not shock me. There's Nico Ruiz of Arizona State that's an intriguing wrestler as the 15 seed. So Peyton Hall has his work cut out for him as that number 2 seed. I think Mitchell Mesenbrink has a one-way ticket to the finals, in my opinion. But those are some of the wrestlers he could face. 174, Levi Haines. We've already talked about it and projected it, but everybody's got their eye on a potential Levi Haines versus Dean Hamiti semifinal. And then the winner of that one is most likely going to face Keegan O'Toole. Keegan O'Toole's got an interesting one with setting up with Lorenzo Norman of Stanford. I'm eager to see that one. That's going to be a Thursday night second round matchup, potentially. Lenny Pinto's an 8 seed. Keegan O'Toole's got quite the path there. But for Levi Haines, right, this is a Penn State conversation, ironically enough. Small world. I've interviewed Avery Bassett before because I covered Central Pennsylvania wrestling, high school wrestling for a little bit, and I've interviewed Avery Bassett before. He went to one of the local high schools in the area, and so Levi Haines is going to wrestle him in that opening matchup. Luca Augustine, I've seen Luca Augustine of Pitt win a state title before. He could face him in the second round. So just a little bit of a small world coincidence here with what I've been covering throughout my time for wrestling in the path that Levi Haines has. But other than Dean Hamiti, this is not an easy, I don't want to say easy, but you should be confident that Levi Haines is going to make it to the semifinal without any hiccups, without any blemishes before he meets Dean Hamiti. And the same thing with Dean Hamiti. I don't see anybody on that side of the bracket that can challenge Hamiti here. It's a crash course between the two, and then that one gets tough. I would not be envious of Keegan O'Toole. He's got to go through some tough wild cards up in that other part of the bracket, though. So O'Toole, I know he's the favorite. He's the number 1 seed. He's proven it against Hamiti and Haines. Just saying he's got his work cut out for him. Still on the way, Carter Starocci, Josh Barr, Greg Kerkvliet, 184, 197 heavyweight respectively. Plus, Cael Sanderson gave us an update on Josh Barr's availability. Was it good news? We'll talk about all of it coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, of investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money, you start building wealth. You have surprising insights. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on different things like subscriptions or food deliveries, packages. Now I budget smarter and save more. All in one convenience. Instead of juggling the multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. And then there's easy collaboration. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's right, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. We'll finish up with heavyweight, talk about Josh Barr's status from Cael Sanderson, directly from the source. But we'll begin this segment with Carter Starocci, 184. He's going to be a favorite, obviously, going for his 5th NCAA championship. However, I do think Jeff Byers brings up a great point that every wrestler is going to give it their all to try to disrupt this unprecedented accomplishment, what would be obviously historical and probably something that never happens again because of the circumstances with COVID here. So Starocci is the number 1 seed. I really don't see anybody that stands in his way up until it's not going to get interesting until Dustin Plott. And I've made the comments already. Now, some people disagreed with me, which is why the comment section is open and everything's fair game. Dustin Plott at 18-4 overall. Now, granted, right, the losses come to Parker Kakaisen twice, one of them Angelo Ferrari. And Angelo Ferrari did give Carter Starocci a run for his money as well. So I'll concede the fact that Dustin Plott may not necessarily look the same from afar, but the people that are closer, hey, that my counterpart at Locked On Oklahoma State kind of agreed with me, actually did agree with me that he doesn't have as much confidence in a Dustin Plott to even get to the semifinal, and it is a concern. So Carter Starocci, but on his side of the bracket, to go through potentially Jackson Smith again of Maryland, or maybe it's an unfamiliar foe in Reese Heller of Pitt, just to give him something different. But Bennett Berge of San Diego State. Silas Allred maybe as a dark horse to make the semifinals as the 12 seed. It's really Starocci, Parker Kakaisen as the 2 seed, or Max McAnally. I'm pretty confident in my read on this because not a lot of people bought into the fact that, McAnally was going to give Starocci issues in the Big Ten championship, and they went to sudden victory. So kind of keeping up with all of these wrestlers, it's really a 3-man race here at 184. Starocci's going to be the favorite. Kakaisen's right there, though. There is not a lot that separates them, and there's really not a lot that separates Max McAnally from those two. I would argue that McAnally has a chance to upset Kakaisen. He almost did it in the Big Ten championship against Starocci. I think it came down to a redshirt freshman mistake, the inexperience of it all. But that's why I'm confident that Starocci bulldozes his way all the way through until the championship, and then Kakaisen, now Dustin Plott, maybe with that added motivation, he does get to the semifinal and makes things a little intriguing. I don't think Dustin Plott's a bad wrestler. That's not what I was trying to argue when I made my comments in the Locked On Oklahoma State Nittany Lions crossover there. My point was that, hey, Dustin Plott doesn't look the same. He's losing matches that he shouldn't. He shouldn't lose to Angelo Ferrari. He's the veteran. Ferrari's new to this. Ferrari's really good. I understand that. But I would still expect Dustin Plott to win that matchup, especially in crunch time, especially after wrestling from behind. But Starocci's the favorite here. Kakaisen and McAnally are really the only ones that I think can disrupt a 5th NCAA title. But everybody in the way is going to give it their all if and when they meet Starocci. But those are the most likely foes that he will meet along the way. At 197, Josh Barr as the 4th seed. So here's the update from Cale Sanderson. Sanderson said in the Penn State coaches show, live on air, that Josh Barr is good to go. He acknowledged that he had to be helped off of the mat, but he is going to be okay. And the direct quote is, he will be ready to go and scrapping next week. He answered this question on Thursday of last week. So that is fantastic news for Josh Barr. And the update we got from Jeff Byers as well, it didn't seem like there was an enormous amount of concern. Obviously, everybody's holding their breath. But at the same time, nobody was somber. And that's pretty telling to be around the team, and you would be upset if there was a season-ending injury that had been sustained by Barr. So everybody was in good spirits. It's not just about winning the Big Ten title. Is everybody okay after winning the Big Ten title? And it looks like that is the case for Barr. As the 4th seed, though, he's going to have to go through Jacob Cardenas. Everybody knows that in the top half of the bracket, he wouldn't see the likes of AJ Ferrari or Stephen Buchanan unless he upset Cardenas and moves on to the championship. Michael Beard is somebody that he could wrestle again as the 5 seed, and we know that he won by major decision, but that's a potential quarterfinals matchup as that 5 seed. Stephen Little, Trey Munoz, as I can't believe they're listed as 12 and 13 seeds respectively. Barr would have to face a Trey Munoz of Oregon State in the second round. And then if and when he moves on, I think Barr defeats Munoz, even though I'm not going to try to discredit Munoz here. That's just my confidence in Barr. Stephen Little, as a 13 seed, that one went down to the wire. That one went down to sudden victory in that Penn State, Arkansas, Little Rock dual meet at the collegiate duels. And Barr won 4-1 in sudden victory. So that is, Stephen Little's not a 12 seed. Let me just say that. Little is not a 12 seed. So be on the lookout for that as a potential revenge matchup, possibly an upset there. I think that's the one that if Barr maybe trips up, that's a spot that it could be. I think he defeats Beard again if they happen to meet in that quarterfinal, but Beard actually has to defeat Stephen Little. They're ranked 5th and 6th respectively in the coaches' rankings. Beard was the fifth overall wrestler, and then your 12 seed here, Stephen Little, was ranked 6th by most of whether Intermat or the coaches' rankings. You get my point here, is that he's a little underrated going into this tournament here. Jacob Cardenas, I expect to make the semifinal. Zach Bronigal, I think, has an interesting path as the number 9 seed, but he would have to upset Jacob Cardenas. Luke Serber of Oklahoma State as an 8th seed, same thing, would have to defeat Bronigal of Illinois and then upset Cardenas if Barr and he were to meet at the semifinals. And then looking at that other half of the bracket, Stephen Buchanan and AJ Ferrari seem to be on a crash course to the semifinals, and either one of them could make the championship. I would argue that Cardenas and Buchanan and Barr have all been objectively better this season, but it also has to do with Ferrari's getting back into the swing of things with wrestling, with all the off-the-mat stuff he was dealing with, obviously, and then being in a weaker conference, or being at Cal Bakersfield, that he was facing weaker competition, but then goes and wins the Pac-12 title. So take it for what it's worth. That's how it should unfold. Those are the wrestlers. Those are the toughest matchups that Barr could face along the way. Circle that potential one against Stephen Little of Arkansas Little Rock. At heavyweight, it's pretty simple. Outside of Gable Steveson in the championship, I think that's how everybody's approaching this bracket. Now, it's not to overlook Wyatt Hendrickson in the semifinals, but anybody that's having a conversation about Hendrickson or about Kerkvliet and trying to make their case in point for them to get to the championship, it's all moot because Gable Steveson will be there on Saturday night. So, focusing on that one, Greg Kerkvliet will have a pretty standard path. There's nothing surprising or shocking about the 3 seed when I made that assessment and said Hendrickson objectively has a better resume at heavyweight to be the 2 seed. That wasn't meant to be a hot take. That was a genuine assessment of, well, Hendrickson won the Big 12 title. He's undefeated. He has more overall wins. He's ranked higher in the RPI. I think that he's going to be seated above Greg Kerkvliet, but the difference was this could have been real out of hand if you happen to be battling for the 3 seed, for example, and you drop to the 4 seed. So Owen Treffin of Lehigh ends up getting that 4 seed and kind of has to run into Steveson in that semifinal, and then will get knocked down in consolations. I still have the utmost confidence in Kerkvliet to get to the championship, especially with what we know from Locked On Oklahoma State. Cody telling us that, hey, Hendrickson sustained a serious wrist injury. And fortunately, it's not a ligament or anything like that that's going to really keep him, not at his best, but still a nasty wrist injury where people say that it did not look good and it did not seem right in the moment. And that Hendrickson, if they didn't need to win the team title, he might have medically forfeited there. That's kind of telling. How quickly can he heal up? The same case could be made for Josh Barr here. The same standard applies here to Hendrickson. I still like Kerkvliet even with Hendrickson at 100%, but that'll still be an intriguing matchup. Other matchups along the way that Kerkvliet will have to go through. He's most likely going to face Josh Heinzelman again of Michigan, and Heinzelman, very good wrestler, extremely talented wrestler, but Kerkvliet has had his number all the way this season here. There's really nobody else that I have circled in this bracket. Kerkvliet is an NCAA champion. If it wasn't for Gable Steveson, he'd be the odds-on favorite for a heavyweight title once again. And he and Wyatt Hendrickson would be on a crash course for the championship as opposed to the semifinal here. So that's really the only matchup that I'm looking at in this bracket of Heinzelman. It'll be an interesting one in that 3 versus 6 matchup in the quarterfinal, but the semifinal matchup, that's when it gets really interesting and entertaining for Kerkvliet. And then going into Gable Steveson, where most likely, we'll talk about it again leading up and making some more predictions and analysis, but obviously the odds are not in Kerkvliet's favor. So that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thank you so much for checking out this episode and supporting the show. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Be a part of the conversation. And if you are new, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast to stay up to date with Penn State wrestling and all your favorite Penn State sports teams here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, you got to check out Locked On College Basketball with hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here. Become the most informed college basketball fan right now with Locked On College Basketball. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.